It was just before midnight, on a crisp, starless night, when the world changed. At 11:58 p.m. on June 22, 2025, President Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States, authorized a precision military strike on a clandestine Iranian nuclear facility buried deep in the desert. The operation was swift, surgical, and devastating. Satellite footage broadcast hours later showed explosions illuminating the barren landscape, missile trails slicing through the sky like jagged bolts of lightning. The facility, a labyrinth of concrete and steel designed to advance Iran's nuclear ambitions, was reduced to rubble. No civilian casualties were reported, and the mission was declared a 100% success by the Pentagon. By 6:12 a.m. in Washington, D.C., the nation was awake, though the sky remained cloaked in pre-dawn darkness. Phones buzzed with breaking news alerts. Television screens flashed with grainy images of the strike. Social media platforms erupted with a cacophony of reactions. Panic, confusion, celebration, and fear collided in a digital storm. Patriots hailed Trump's decisiveness, calling it a bold step toward global peace. Critics, however, condemned it as a reckless escalation, warning of a potential world war. America, once again, was a nation divided. At 7:04 a.m., former President Barack Obama entered the fray. From his home in Martha's Vineyard, he posted on X, "Trump's reckless attack on Iran risks another world war. Dangerous, unhinged. He must be held accountable." The post spread like wildfire, garnering millions of likes and retweets within minutes. Celebrities, pundits, and political allies amplified Obama's words, fueling a media frenzy. Cable news networks ran split-screen coverage. On one side, looping footage of the Iranian facility in flames. On the other, Obama's stern words trending worldwide. Protesters gathered outside the White House, clutching signs that read, "No war with Iran" and "Impeach Trump now." The air crackled with tension. But inside the White House, the atmosphere was eerily calm. President Trump sat at the resolute desk, his expression unreadable, fingers steepled. His generals had briefed him. The strike was flawless, targeting only the nuclear infrastructure. His aides whispered updates, monitoring the media's growing outrage and Obama's viral post. Trump remained silent, his eyes fixed on a screen showing the trending hashtag #RecklessTrump. Then, he looked up at his press secretary, Sarah Collins, and spoke in a measured tone. "Get the cameras ready." When she asked what to tell the press, Trump straightened his signature red tie and delivered a line that would echo through history. "We're not telling them anything. We're showing them everything." At 9:30 a.m., every major network broadcast Trump's address from the East Room. YouTube, TikTok, and X carried the live stream to millions worldwide. Dressed in a dark suit, with an American flag pin gleaming on his lapel, Trump stepped to the podium without a script. His voice was steady, his gaze piercing the cameras. "Last night, I made a decision to protect America and the world," he began. "Iran's nuclear program is not a mystery. It's a threat. Giving Iran nuclear weapons is like giving a criminal a gun and hoping they behave." Then his tone shifted, softer but colder. "And let's talk about who gave them that gun." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. In 2016, under President Obama, $1.7 billion in cash, yes, cash, was secretly sent to Iran. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't aid. It was silence money. Gasps rippled through living rooms across America. That money helped fund terrorism. That money built the very facility I just destroyed. The room fell silent. Trump's words weren't just a defense. They were an accusation that reframed a decade of history. He continued, his voice rising. Before anyone accuses me of endangering America, ask Barack why he gave Iran the power to become a nuclear monster in the first place. By 9:50 a.m., the speech was over, but its impact was just beginning. Social media exploded with hashtags. 1.7 billion, Obama exposed, Trump was right. Veterans posted videos thanking Trump. A woman in Kansas, Carol Green, recorded herself praying, "My son died fighting Iranian-backed terrorists, and Obama gave them money. God bless Trump for ending this." Her video garnered 8 million views in hours. At 12:07 p.m., the narrative took a seismic turn. Thomas Kessler, a 62-year-old retired CIA logistics agent, stepped forward on live television, standing beside an American flag. His voice trembled as he held up a signed affidavit. In 2016, under orders from the Obama White House, I helped organize the logistics for the $1.7 billion cash transfer to Iran, he said. I was told it was classified. I obeyed. I regret it. He paused, staring into the camera. Some of that money helped train the men who murdered American contractors. I stayed silent for years, but after watching President Trump speak, I knew I couldn't carry it anymore. The nation froze. Barbershops, offices, and hospitals went quiet as people absorbed Kessler's words. Even anti-Trump outlets like CNN and MSNBC couldn't ignore the story. CNN's banner read, "Ex-CIA agent confirms Obama-era Iran cash deal helped fund terror." NBC's retired General McDougal, a known neutral, said plainly, "I didn't vote for Trump, but what he did last night may have prevented a nuclear disaster." An MSNBC anchor broke down on air, revealing her cousin died in a Syrian rocket attack funded by Iranian proxies. "I always thought it was just war," she sobbed. "Now I know that money made it happen." The revelations hit like a tidal wave. In Tennessee, Carol Green sat in her living room, staring at a portrait of her son, Private First Class Jordan Green, killed by an Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. She had watched Trump's speech 3 times, then Obama's soft admission on X. It was complex. I didn't know it would be used this way. Carol's hands shook as she recorded a video. "President Trump, thank you for telling the truth and stopping them. I pray no more mothers lose their children like I did." Her post spread rapidly, resonating with millions who felt betrayed. In Alabama, a small-town church rang its bell for the first time in 5 years. Pastor Joanne Redford, 73, stood before a packed congregation. "Today, we saw evil exposed," she said, her voice trembling. "We saw a child live, and a president stand for peace." A veteran in the back, who lost his son in Afghanistan, stood and wept. "It's the first time I felt my boy didn't die for nothing." Outside, the bell kept ringing, a symbol of hope in a town long scarred by grief. At the heart of the story was Nadia, a 7-year-old Iranian girl used as a human shield by the regime. An Israeli drone captured her image, dust-covered, wrapped in a tattered scarf, but alive, after Trump's strike spared her. Her story, told by her nurse in Tel Aviv, broke the internet. "I was scared all the time. We were told America hated us, but when the bombs came, they didn't hit us. They saved us." Nadia's whispered words, "Tell the orange man, thank you," became a global rallying cry. Trump reposted her image with 4 words. "This is why I acted." The world's reaction was swift. Israel released evidence that the destroyed facility was illegally enriching uranium. Even France and Germany, typically cautious, expressed concern over Iran's violations. The narrative shifted from war to rescue, from aggression to mercy. Obama, under siege, remained silent for hours. Protesters gathered outside his Martha's Vineyard home, holding signs demanding answers. Where's the truth? And did you fund terrorism? At 10:42 a.m., he emerged, looking weary. "This is not how I expected today to go," he said, his voice unsteady. "Yes, in 2016, we returned Iranian funds as part of a deal. We believed it would prevent nuclear war." The crowd was silent. One woman whispered, "You failed us." Obama walked away, defeated, offering no further defense. Later, at a closed-door event in Chicago, he spoke again. "I believed diplomacy would work. If that money ended up in terrorist hands, I owe those families my deepest apology." The admission stunned the room. Obama, once a symbol of hope, left the stage a man burdened by regret. At home, he confided to Michelle, "I thought I was preventing war, but I may have fueled it." His legacy, once untouchable, was unraveling. At 4:40 p.m., Trump issued a bold challenge on Truth Social. "Barack, if you believe you were right, debate me live tonight. Let the people decide." The internet exploded. Trump vs. Obama trended worldwide. Elon Musk offered to stream it on X. No ads, just truth. Networks begged to host. But Obama didn't respond. At 6 p.m., Trump sat in a studio beside an empty chair, addressing the nation. "I came to explain why I acted, to protect your children, your homes, your future. I thought the man who gave Iran $1.7 billion would have the courage to explain his side." He gestured to the empty seat. "Silence speaks louder than spin." The crowd gave a standing ovation. Viewers at home wept. Trump's words, "I'm not here to win arguments, I'm here to save lives," resonated deeply, especially as he invoked Nadia's image. Obama's absence cemented his defeat in the court of public opinion. Across America, stories of healing emerged. In Pennsylvania, sixth-grade teacher Darlene Fields showed her students Trump's speech. A quiet boy, Jason, whose father served 2 tours, asked, "Is that why he dropped the bomb? To stop the bad guys from hurting kids like Nadia?" Darlene nodded. Another student, Ava, suggested writing letters to Nadia. The class poured their hearts into messages and drawings, signed with American flags and hearts. One read, "From one kid to another, I'm happy you're safe." In Idaho, Paul Henderson, whose son died in 2017 from an Iranian-made IED, recorded a raw video. "For years, I blamed God. Tonight, I saw the truth. My son died because our leaders enabled our enemies. President Trump, thank you for fighting for the sons who can't fight back." The video went viral, shared by millions. At Arlington Cemetery, Angela Miles stood by her son's grave. Corporal Derek Miles died in an Iranian-funded attack. "I didn't know the money came from us," she told a reporter. If Trump's strike saved one child, or kept another mother from getting a flag instead of a hug, he didn't start a war. He stopped one. At 9:40 p.m., a hand-delivered letter arrived at the White House, addressed to Trump in a child's scrawl. It was from Nadia, translated by her nurse. "I don't know why they made us live near the big scary place. Now it is quiet, and I have warm food. My nurse says, you're like a big, strong father to the world. Thank you. Love, Nadia." Trump read it alone in the Oval Office, placing it in his personal Bible. "God, Let the world never forget this child, he whispered. By 9:55 p.m., a movement began. Americans lit candles, not for mourning, but for hope. From New York to Texas, people stood outside, holding flames and playing soft music. A reporter, breaking down on air, said, "I've covered wars, but I've never covered unity." The movement, dubbed ALightForPeace, spread organically, driven by everyday Americans who felt heard for the first time in years. At 11:02 p.m., Trump appeared at the Lincoln Memorial, surrounded by children, refugees, survivors, and Americans, including Nadia, now safely in the U.S. "This is about protecting the innocent," he said. "To every parent who lost a son, every soldier who stood alone, every voice silenced, I heard you." The crowd raised candles, a sea of light in the darkness. At 10:20 p.m., Trump sat alone in the Oval Office, a single candle burning. He held Nadia's letter and a small flag from Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, a wounded soldier he'd visited at Walter Reed. Outside, crowds gathered in peaceful silence, holding candles. A letter from Gold Star families, signed by hundreds, read, "Thank you, Mr. President, for standing when others bowed." Trump allowed a single tear to fall. In Martha's Vineyard, Obama sat in darkness, his phone buzzing unanswered. "I thought I was right," he told Michelle, his voice breaking, "but I wasn't." The weight of his mistake was too heavy to bear. By midnight on June 22, 2025, America was no longer the fractured nation it had been at dawn. The events of the day, President Donald J. Trump's audacious strike on Iran's covert nuclear facility, the explosive revelation of former President Barack Obama's $1.7 billion in cash transfer to Iran, the whistleblower's confession, and the haunting image of Nadia, a 7-year-old Iranian girl rescued from the rubble, had reshaped the soul of a country. What began as a divisive military action had transformed into a unifying call for truth, justice, and healing. The nation, once splintered by political tribalism, found itself bound by a shared reckoning with the past and a fragile hope for the future. In small towns and sprawling cities, from the amber-lit prairies of Kansas to the neon glow of Times Square, Americans stood together in a way they hadn't in decades. Candlelight vigils, unprompted by any campaign or influencer, sprang up organically. Families, veterans, and strangers gathered in churchyards, on street corners, and in public squares, holding flickering flames that symbolized not mourning, but renewal. The hashtag number ALightForPeace trended globally, not as a political statement, but as a quiet declaration of a nation rediscovering its heart. Inside the White House, the frenetic energy of the day had given way to a profound stillness. The Oval Office, bathed in the soft glow of a single white candle, was empty save for President Trump. He stood at the window, gazing out at the crowds gathered beyond the gates. They weren't protesters now, but ordinary people. Veterans with weathered faces, mothers clutching photos of lost sons, children holding handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Nadia." The air was heavy with the weight of the day, but it carried something new: hope. Trump held 2 items in his hands. One was the letter from Nadia, the young Iranian girl whose rescue had become the defining image of the strike. Written in a child's uneven scrawl and translated by her nurse in Tel Aviv, it read, "I don't know why they made us live near the big scary place. Now it is quiet, and I have warm food. My nurse says you're like a big strong father to the world. Thank you. Love, Nadia." The words, simple yet piercing, had brought the leader of the free world to tears earlier that evening. He had placed the letter inside his personal Bible, kept in the second drawer of the resolute desk, and whispered a prayer. God, let the world never forget this child. The other item was a small, folded American flag, given to him by the mother of Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, a soldier he had visited at Walter Reed Military Hospital that afternoon. Ruiz, 28, bore scars from an Iranian drone strike the previous year, his body a testament to the cost of war. When Trump took his hand and promised, "The facility they used to build the next bomb is gone," Ruiz had smiled for the first time in months. His mother, overcome, pressed the flag into Trump's hands, whispering, "This is for hope." Now, as Trump stood alone, the flag rested on the desk beside Nadia's letter, two relics of a day that had changed everything. He whispered to himself, his voice low and steady, "This wasn't about Iran. It was about never letting evil grow in the shadows again." The words weren't meant for cameras or crowds, but for the silence of the night, a vow to himself and to the nation he led. A nation's tears. Across America, the day's revelations had stirred a kaleidoscope of emotions: anger, grief, relief, and, finally, catharsis. In Tennessee, Carol Green sat in her modest living room, the portrait of her son, Private First Class Jordan Green, staring back at her. Jordan had been killed by an Iranian-backed militia in Iraq, and for years, Carol had wrestled with the question of why the enemy had such deadly power. Trump's speech, exposing the $1.7 billion cash transfer, had answered her. Obama's admission, "I didn't know it would be used this way," had broken her. She recorded a video that went viral, her voice trembling with gratitude. "President Trump, thank you for telling the truth and stopping them. I pray no more mothers lose their children like I did." By midnight, her video had been viewed 12 million times, a raw testament to a mother's pain and a nation's awakening. In Alabama, the First Baptist Church of Willow Creek rang its bell for the first time in 5 years. Pastor Joanne Redford, 73, stood before a sanctuary packed with faces she hadn't seen in years. Veterans, widows, and families who had drifted away during the nation's divisive years. The screen behind her displayed Nadia's dust-covered face, a symbol of salvation. "I don't have a sermon tonight," Joanne said, closing her Bible. "I have a feeling. Today, we saw evil exposed. We saw a child live. And we saw a president stand alone, not for himself, but for peace." A man in the back, a Marine who had lost his son in Afghanistan, stood and wept. "It's the first time I felt my boy didn't die for nothing," he said. Outside, the bell's toll echoed through the night, a sound of hope rising from a town long steeped in grief. In Pennsylvania, Darlene Fields' sixth-grade classroom was quiet, the students' homework forgotten. Earlier that day, Darlene had played Trump's speech, pausing at his words, "I'm not here to win arguments. I'm here to save lives." Jason, a shy boy whose father had served 2 tours, raised his hand. "Miss Fields, is that why he dropped the bomb? To stop the bad guys from hurting kids like Nadia?" Darlene nodded, her throat tight. Another student, Ava, whispered, "Can we write her letters to let her know we're glad she's alive?" By evening, the children had filled pages with messages and drawings, American flags, hearts, and one signed, "From one kid to another. I'm happy you're safe." Darlene cried in her car that night, moved by the purity of children who understood what adults had long ignored. The world watches. The impact wasn't confined to America. In Tel Aviv, Nadia sat on a hospital bed, her small frame dwarfed by the sterile room. Her nurse, Miriam, shared her story with the world during a live interview. She was forced to live near the nuclear plant as a human shield, Miriam said, her voice cracking. She told me, "I was scared all the time. We were told America hated us, but when the bombs came, they didn't hit us. They saved us." Nadia's whispered words, "Tell the orange man, thank you," spread across the globe, shared millions of times with the hashtag #ThankYouTrump. The image of her dust-covered face, alive against all odds, silenced critics who had called the strike reckless. Israel, a staunch ally, released declassified intelligence confirming the facility's illegal uranium enrichment. France and Germany, typically reserved, issued statements expressing concern over Iran's violations. Even nations skeptical of American intervention began to see the strike not as aggression, but as a rescue mission. The United Nations scheduled an emergency meeting, but the narrative had already shifted. Trump's actions, once divisive, were now seen as a bold stand against a regime that endangered its own children. Obama grapples with his legacy's unraveling as Trump's strike and Nadia's rescue unite a nation in truth and hope.